put in this. By virtue of me suggesting a line in that song, I'm a co-writer for that. Now, up until that time, people just used to carry on business like it didn't matter. No spreadsheets, no agreements to show who owned what. And then there were always arguments. That's why you would see Blackface come and say he wrote African Queen that Two-Face wrote because they were all in the studio when they were writing it. And Two-Face would say, no, you didn't write it. Maybe you mentioned one or two things. And it was always this back and forth. Now you have to let your clients know that the moment somebody enters into your studio, first and foremost, there has to be a copyright release form that they should sign. So it's not just coming in and start vibing. Don't vibe in my studio. Whatever you vibe to, I own. So that you will not leave and say that I wrote that song for you. And the Copyright Act specifically mentions that there can be no transfer of rights in a song if it is not in writing. So there is no, you're my guy now, I thought we were just, it can't happen like that. Now that was the chaos that was in the music industry at the time. And then little by little, we started letting them understand. So we had like 3 processes to go through. The first one was let them even understand that there are laws that guide the entertainment industry. And it was way different from law firms that were doing intellectual property. Of recent, certain law firms have been reaching out to us to come train their entertainment law departments. Now they had existing intellectual property departments. Now the intellectual property department will probably do copyright litigation, go to court to say, or trademark litigation, this person is using our mark, is passing over our mark as theirs, and all. But entertainment law practice is actually goes deeper into the operations of the entertainment industry, meaning that when I do advisory service, I'm almost clear as to, I have to have a deep understanding of every aspect of it, from the music. If I'm representing a movie producer, it means that I must know about the movie business, because you are not just their lawyer, you are to be their business advisor. You are to provide transaction support services for them. It took us a long time, but I can say that at this point that with a lot of blood, sweat, suffering, God's grace, people that have helped us, we've gotten to the point where we have a clear understanding of what should be what in the entertainment industry, to the point that we now represent some of the highest earners. We represent Funke. She's the biggest actress in Nigeria, in Africa actually. She has the movie that is the highest box office earner in Nigeria. We represent some of the biggest musicians. But for us to go from where we were to where we are now, it was a process of learning, unlearning, spending time with the clients. Like she said, you don't have a 9 to 5. You have a when I open my eyes and when I shut it. In fact, I remember that there were several relationships as a young man that I had with my ex-girlfriends that broke down because they didn't understand that, yes, I was a professional, but I was in a practice that was different from the average legal practice. All the other lawyers, they knew when they go home at 7 p.m. or 9 p.m., laptops closed. My own practice starts at 9 p.m. because my clients will probably start recording by 9 p.m. I'm with them in the studio sometimes. Then they finish, they want to have a meeting. The meeting is in the club. So you go to the club with them, and in the meeting you are, that cross cannot go like the music is blasting and you are screaming. No, they cannot tell us that. You are drinking, they are smoking, they're doing all these things, and you are still providing legal service. I think that it will be against one of the sections of the rules of but it just doesn't. In conclusion, I think that has been a roller coaster. It is not what the average lawyer would understand. But for anybody that wants to come into the entertainment law practice, it is beautiful. It is rewarding. As of right now, we've had to train them. Okay, you need lawyers. Now you need to pay lawyers, right? One of the high points of my career is negotiating an equity offtake with a Nigerian company against Mr. Martin House. For anybody that knows it, that's Beyonce's dad. Like I'm in a conversation, I'm in a meeting with him to say, how much are you dropping for this? And the man looks at me and says, well, the details and everything. I think we're doing very well. We can do better. Thank you very much.
skipped it, but we understand. That was very beautiful. And I want you to understand that this is not just a session for company secretaries. And that's why I had to just take that push to come to, from NGA to the Lady and then we'll go back to EBA. But this is beautiful because it's about practices outside the courtroom. Anything but litigation. And NGA talked a lot about secretarial, in-house, legal advisory services. And I think that is talked a lot about entertainment and then creatives and all of that. And now we'll go to the third, okay, thank you very much. The third of panelists. A lot of questions are already coming through my mind. And then as you can see, those of us here are related. And we know ourselves. I don't know about you. But please write your questions and don't miss out on it. There are a lot of things that he just touch. Just imagine that we understand what to say, split sheet, this, it was just going on and on. But we're going to come back to him and we're going to get into go a bit into all of those things. But let's have Vivier just share with us for the next 10 minutes. A round of applause for her, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Wow, I feel like I'm sitting with giants. The one thing that I've gotten from everything I've listened to today is this: lawyers can practically do everything. I don't know if it's the training we get in school, but there's almost nothing we cannot swing into. And when I look at my career, it has been weird. I've gone from practice to consulting when I was a trainer, which is funny because I was so young and newly out of school. But people tend to think that because you're a lawyer, you know more than you know. Maybe because it's the English you speak. But people just think you're intelligent, even when you know nothing. And they come and meet you and start asking you all manner of questions, and somehow you feel like you're representing your vice chancellor and you can't just disgrace your dean of, So you just find a way to wing yourself through it, even when you don't know what you're saying. I've also worked in fintech. At the point I was a product manager. It's a very long story how I got into that. I got into it almost by accident because they just felt you can do this. But let me talk about what I do currently. So currently, I'm a legal and compliance practitioner within the financial services. I work in an insurance company. Now, what does this mean? In addition to the fact that you're responsible for handling the legal rights and obligations of the organization, you also have the very dangerous side of business called compliance. Why do I call it dangerous? In a financial institution, compliance it's not just dynamic. You're not limited to the laws of Nigeria. Because Nigeria is a party to some international treaties that deal with financial transactions, financial crimes, you find that you're answerable to even governments outside of Nigeria because that is where the law comes from. For instance, I'm an anti-money laundering specialist. The body of laws that govern that particular area of financial services were not produced in Nigeria. These are laws that started in Europe and then drilled down and then they say, okay, the whole world has to sign this treaty. There's some countries that didn't sign, but obviously we do. I'm sure we were aware when the international community wanted to suspend Nigeria from the Egerton Group because we refused to separate the National Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit from EFCC. They felt it shouldn't have been part of it. And at a point in time, we were going to become victims of that system, which meant that even you as a Nigerian, you may have had trouble traveling or doing international financial transactions simply because you were Nigerian. And then you have things of where does Nigeria stand when it comes to the transparency index, when it comes to corruption. It's funny because these are international laws, but somehow it drills down to you who is your small company lawyer in an organization. And then I say it's risky because within a financial institution, we now have what's personal liability, which means that if your company does not follow the law, minus the fine the company will have to pay, you as a compliance officer can also bear personal liability. You can pay 2 million naira out of your own pocket because your company didn't obey the law. You can go to prison because of it. And with financial services, there's always the risk of EFCC calling you. I think it was my birthday this year, and I woke up and I thought I was going to have a good day, and then I spent the whole day in EFCC. By the time I was done, I was frustrated. Because if you dealt with EFCC, you can say the very wrongest thing. You're not the criminal. They just it's funny. They say, could you come so we could ask you 1 or 2 questions? And then you go innocently, and then you find yourself there for 8 hours. And I was really expecting something positive that day, so I don't know what entered my mind. But by the time I got there, and then I went to the colleague, who after he had finished writing his statements, suddenly decided that, he thought this would come back and bite him later, and suddenly says he wants to detain personally. And I'm here trying to argue with a full-grown adult man. Why no rational Nigerian should want to stay in EFCC cell? There's nothing to prove, really. Legal practice from a financial institution perspective, it's very, very complicated. You have to be very dynamic. You have to be up to date with laws that consistently change. If the law changes in Vienna or in France, Nigeria will fit in, sometimes without even really thinking about our own local dynamics and our own local flavor. We just adopt it because we want to be able to go to the airport and get a visa. So we say, yes, we're going to do this. And then with the compliance officers, with the legal officers, we're then stuck with a problem of how do you balance the Nigerian environment with this law that somebody in maybe a calmer country, I don't want to use the word that comes to mind when you want to describe the Nigerian environment. But some things just don't, fly here. But somehow you're still responsible for knowing all those laws, knowing how it will work for your company, and most importantly, you have to fight the big battle of this is what the law says, but we have to make profit. So sometimes they come to meet you, and that's where I understand where Mrs. Gowam will say, you're not just a lawyer when you're in corporate practice. You have to know the business. You have to know, okay, I work in insurance. You want to sell insurance out there. What sort of thing will fly with the customers? Is it legal? When they come back, because a lot of people buy things they do not understand. Some people buy third-party insurance and expect that when their own car gets damaged, the insurance company should come and repair it. That's not how third-party works, and then they come and start trying to threaten you with litigation. And so you're also a customer management specialist, because these people are writing you letters, the letters are threatening. In fact, if you're not careful, they will insult everything about you. Oh, you think you're a lawyer? If someone said the other day that, in fact, if he had studied law, by now he would be a son. He's not a lawyer. He's not a lawyer. So when you're a lawyer, people just think you know everything. I don't think I know everything, but this is what the law says. There's a contract. Someone did not read it, and now somehow you're supposed to be liable. You start to understand the extent of how liability works. Because once a consumer purchases something from an organization, because they didn't understand it, someone can tie you in court for an extended period of time. But then, like she said, you can win the battle and lose the war. You win the case in court. But then, what does the perspective of the general public have about your business? I work in insurance, and if I ask everyone around here now, what do you think about insurance? The first thing goes to your head, they don't think. I know my cousins, brothers, wives, girlfriend bought insurance and they didn't pay. And nobody will really tell you that. They didn't read the contract. I mean, insurance is a contract. They didn't read it, and now they're trying to make a claim. You can't sit around and just allow your company to lose money like that. So you're the gatekeeper. Nobody really understands what you do. Nobody understands what lawyers do unless they're lawyers. They feel we just sit around and speak a lot of English. But God forbid they get a letter from the police or some lawyer from a law firm. Suddenly they're running to you and you're like, but didn't you just ask the other day what we actually do here? And now you're running around. As in-house counsel, there's also a risk that I don't know if you've experienced that. People don't draw the line between what your job is and you're a lawyer, so you must know everything. So you're sitting in your office and someone's coming to tell you, how can I divorce my wife? And I wonder, how is this my problem? Now, my landlord has turned up the water. Okay. So you actually have to also learn how to, initially you'd be thinking you have to run around and do these things. When people come and tell me they want to divorce their wives, they want to divorce their husbands, I'm like, you know what? I went to school with a very good divorce lawyer. He will help you scatter everything since you want to scatter your marriage. And I'll just give you the phone number of someone who that is their specialty. Nobody really draws that line. You're their property consultant, you're their tax consultant. It's weird, divorce is on the rise, maybe that's why I keep mentioning it. Everybody seems to want to get divorced these days, and it's in-house counsel that they come to me to ask, so how do I get around this? So it's a very interesting thing, law practice outside the courtroom. You have to be very open-minded. you have to be willing to take on weird information. Like when he says he's starting to talk like an engineer, and she's talking about products. I deal with product management in my company, and it began because I'm seeking regulatory approval for it. And then somehow I'm not the one who is going to start doing things like revenue projections, because it's part of the application. So you start to understand the product itself. If you're not open-minded, if all you want to do is plaintiff versus defendant, maybe a little difficult. But as long as you're open-minded, which I think most legal education actually gives most of us, there's almost nothing you can't do as a lawyer. There's always something that you can fit into as a lawyer. And if you're looking for that thrill of doing diverse things every day because you're not sure what you're going to come to the office and see at any point in time, then corporate practice might really be. Thank you.
I can't make that louder. Thank you very much. Oh, the chairman of the house is here. Please let me welcome to the high table, Mr. Bartholomew Agwebulu. That's